Hello and welcome to Geek on My Sleeve channel, where we do weekly book reviews and live book discussions.
Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Hello, my name is Peter, and I'm here with my co host Carl, and we are going to be doing a book summary or recap of All These Worlds Bobiverse Book 3 by Dennis E. Taylor, narrated by Ray Porter, and it is a Audible original.
So this book summary slash recap is going to be filled of spoilers. If you do not want spoilers of the Bobiverse up until and through book 3, now's your time to abort. Our goal here is to give you a snapshot of the Bobiverse up until this point. We're going to let you know where we're at in the series. That way, when book 4, Heaven's River, comes out, your memory has been jogged. We understand that everyone is not able to go back and reread a series whenever there's new content that comes out. So you've been warned. Spoilers ahead. And yeah, let's get into this, Pete. At the end of book 3, we have more than 500 Bobs at this point and at least 10 generations and or clones cohorts out. Sorry. And at least 10 generations. And yeah, now getting into the individual story arcs of all these worlds.
So, first one we want to talk about is Bob 2.0. He's currently pretty much living full time as Robert in the Delton Society. Then, as we go through the story, he has Archimedes die, which is a big blow for him. He kind of decides, hey, I'm tired of people dying off. There's no more holding me here. Ends up leaving the Delton Society and has a soul-searching journey or a pilgrimage to Soul, where he kind of goes over, this is where it all started, this is where he died, this is where he became a replicant, and then he's gone off, done his thing, and now he's able to move on in a different direction.
Yeah. For Bob 2.0, Delta Eridani and the Deltans has been a huge part of his story arc, and we get to see that conclusion here in book 3. He pretty much parks himself out of Delta Eridani as soon as he's done with the first cohort, right? Of Riker, Bill, Mario, and Milo. So another major story arc in book 3 that we spend a lot of time on is Howard and Bridget's story arc. When we get to book 3, Bridget is older. Stefan has already passed away. Her children are grown, and Howard gets a second chance with Bridget. He spends a lot of time in Manny, living in an android form of Bob.
So he starts off as a 30-year-old or original android Bob. There's a comment about make sure you hold hands with mommy, and he ends up modifying the Manny android to resemble a similar age as Bridget.
And then eventually Bridget dies. He has to go through the legal battle with her kids, Rosie, and long story short, she becomes our third replicant in the Bobiverse slash Bobnet, right? Because we also have the Australian probe and then Bridget with Howard, where they spend a lot of time in Omicron to Eridani, exploring that gas giant, documenting the wildlife there, as well as eventually adopting kids of their own. And then Bridget spends time with Howard, being a grandparent to Howie, and they're able to do that through the Scut connection, which is a very crucial part of the Bobiverse slash Bobnet. In that story arc, we also see that Butterworth dies, He was on our list to be replicated, but due to a degenerate form of dementia, he was unable to be replicated. And that kind of starts a lot of these Bobs um, onto the fading into legend and kind of distancing themselves a little bit with the ephemerals, because we see a lot of people leave us in this book.
And then we also have a story arc with Marcus out at Poseidon. It starts off where he's trying to set up Poseidon. He's trying to make sure that they're self reliant or self sufficient. That way, less is on him. So they're taking over. It turns out that they're similar to the Faith Enclave, where they want to be a little over controlling. He ends up starting a rebellion, so to speak. And it's unique the way he does it. Starting a rebellion, flying cities, pretty much takes out that government, and now they're on better terms at the end of it. And at the end, he creates a dolphin android to catalog the seas.
Bill is very much being the puppet master in Epsilon Eridani. We get to see more of his terraforming with Ragnarok. Garfield's still hanging out with him in system, and they have their androids, Rocky and Bullwinkle, the moose, and the flying bat squirrel androids. And in book 3, I felt that Bill played a more active role. We really get to see the full potential of the Scut technology, because we'll get into a little bit later here talking about Mack's story arc and how Bill finally gets to join the front lines in combat with when he was talking to Mack, and he just drops off Bobnet. He's able to send out an SOS and join the front line in the roamers hand-to-hand combat with their laser swords. But yeah, with Medeiros. A couple other important pieces in Bill's story arc. He gets the backup system built for the Bobs, which is very crucial, and we'll talk a bit more about with the Moots. He has a lot of other side projects that has really helped.
Okay, and so Riker's story arc is kind of unique here for this one. He is still at the beginning, he's still at Sol. He's still trying to deal with the logistical values of how to get people off planet and or keep them alive on planet. We get a lot of those, heartstrings where they pull at it, where Julia dies. We get to see Justin grow up, become Space Cadet Justin, all the way to Admiral Justin. His arc is kind of over because we get to see with Admiral Justin when has a birthday and he's trying to fade into legend, as well as at the end of the book, everybody on Sol has been picked up in the other ship, so he's no longer necessarily needed at Sol, and he's no longer being the face of Bob for the family. He can always do that with Scud or whatever, so yeah, his story kind of comes to a close, but he's free to do whatever.
It's also important to note that in book 3, we really got to see a lot more of him just kind of get fed up with humanity, right? The enclaves in the end, getting very just frustrated, and he has to kind of control his the image he projects to them because he doesn't want to be viewed that way. But earlier in the series, Bill makes note about the Riker clones being more distant from humanity and thinking of them as ephemerals. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see where his story arc goes now that his big project, the evacuation of Sol, has come to a close at the end of book 3. We talked a little bit about it already, but Mack, another colony, 82 Eridani, has both the Japanese enclave and the Vancouver Island enclave. We get to see a little bit of that early development, and then he's talking to Bill, and Medeiros has attacked him, and his story arc pretty much ends until they resolve the issue with Medeiros, which that in itself is kind of interesting. We didn't hear any communication from him in the conflict for book 3. And yeah, they're still trying to figure out if he's out there. They're trying to figure out how he was able to produce these different types of missiles and military grade stuff. So it implies we haven't seen the last of Madeira's.
So Madeira's is going to be the villain who shows up in every episode to twirl his mustache. Then we have Neil and Herschel, Kuiper Belt and Delta Pavonis. So they play a critical role in finding the others ship that in previous books we had addressed, or that we took out of commission. Now that we're not in the middle of combat, they find the ship, and they at first they don't tell anyone about the ship. It is what it is. They have a lot of fun. They're trying to find out what they can do to be able to stamp something on their hull. They end up putting mover plates around it so that they don't have to necessarily deal with the tech, and they play a critical role in saving Sol.
1,500 ships or 1,500 trips was the big hurdle we had to overcome in the evacuation of Sol. And before Neil and Herschel bring this to Bill and Riker's attention, they were running into some bottlenecks, right? They were running out of easily to find resources, and just the others, like, not enough time. At one point, I think Will and Bill say that you could easily misplace 14 million people in this other's cargo vessel, which again just goes to show the incredible size and scale of the others' vessels when they're fighting them at the conclusion later. But I digress. I'm getting ahead of myself. Yeah, Neil and Herschel's story arc is like very interesting. They definitely, in my opinion, one of the MVPs of book 3. And through their story arc, we also get to see a lot more of just the difference in the generations that some of the earlier Bobs talk about, because we're going through a lot of different story arcs here, but there's over 500 Bobs in 10 generations, and Neil and Herschel are generation 8, and they refer to themselves as being the pond scum. Star Trek security, the red shirts look their nose down at them. So this is a big moment for them, where they become project leaders in just the others invasion. Ramble. Speaking of others and other intelligent life that we've met, at the beginning of book 3, we see through Howard's eyes that they lost the battle for the Pav, right? So they go from a whole planet down to 20,000 Pav with Jacques over at HIP 84051. And we get to see through Jacques just trying to help them rebuild their society. He took a lot of samples, and again, thanks to Bill's efforts on being able to replicate stuff, they say it's not quite Star Trek level, but they're able to get them set up in the new planet and also start working on trying to repopulate their old planet, and also taking care of the minerals in other ways that they can, but they eventually want to give the Pav their own homeworld back. And there's so much there. What else do you feel is worth bringing up for the Pav and the interaction with Jacques?
The Pav and Jacques, and they pretty much say, you have everything, but you have nothing. You're so rich that you don't even need.
Yeah, they really struggle to understand where they're coming from.
But it also really hits home for how the Bobs feel.
Luke and Marvin on the hunt for Bender. That's where we're at the end of book 3. And the working title for Heaven's River was The Search for Bender. So anticipating seeing a lot more of Luke and Marvin in book 4. They are part of Bob 2.0's cohort or line along with Bender. Not the first one, but I want to say the second one. Don't quote me. Feel free to correct us in the comments below if we misquote anything from the books. Our memories are not perfect, like Bob. Um, just stuck being an ephemeral, Pete, till we freeze our heads. So, Luke and Marvin, any more to that, or are we into the others?
We're into the others. So this whole book is has a lot of little side story arcs that are cool, but the main premise is book 2, we attack the others. We got stomped. As Thor points out, can we win? And it really comes down right to the wire. They're at Sol, they're firing shots. We end up losing people on Sol.
Final combat, Neil and Herschel
Thank you.
show up in the nick of time. Um, Luckily, like the initial estimates for setting up the cargo ship to be moved, I think they said it was like 18 mover plates would be sufficient to bring it. But they were still exploring, still doing a lot of stuff inside. At one point, they compare it again just to put the scale into perspective. They thought of it as normal size and them as like cockroach sized insects just flying around inside the cargo vessel. So they add 8 more mover plates, and the issue of having transportation is null and void. They can essentially land and start evacuating people during the others' invasion. We end up losing Cuba, which I want to say was like 150,000 people as far as human casualties. We end up losing 90% of the 500 some Bobs, though I guess not all of them were there, but the bulk of them were there for the final battle. Um, and yeah, with the others, it essentially came down to luck, right? The others made a poor move where instead of launching their fighters from one of the Death Destroyers, they launched it from one a little too far away, and they were able to use the radiation off of the Joker squad to kill all of the life um, on the others' ships.
Yeah, that pretty much came down to, being a computer and split second timing. Like, they didn't do the wrong move,
Mm,
but they did it from the wrong place. So, due to
yeah,
us being, or the Bobs being supercomputers more or less, and being able to frame jack and analyze things down to the, millisecond timing, we won.
we won. And the Hail Mary set up by Bill early on, I always butcher their names. Ick and Dick, uh, they eliminate the other's homeworld. So we beat them at home at Seoul and we wipe them out. And pretty much they say essentially, unless there's some other nest out there that they don't know about, though from what we do know about the others is they're very hive mind and there can only be one prime. So we're pretty sure that they're gone at this point, and it allows a lot of the Bobs who have been rushing around for these last couple years their responsibilities. And as Admiral Justin says, like they're constantly doing chores in the afterlife come to a close, right? They were all rushing for this final conflict with the others, which takes us to the final moot where we get to see it through Bill's point of view, and he starts to think of them as the dissidents, right? Thor, who like did some serious heavy lifting on the weapons front, and the others battle, and like all these Bobs really just working around the clock to save humanity and move them around. They're fed up, right? They're
Yeah.
done of they're done doing chores.
And so with them being done doing chores, it's kind of neat to see how many androids or what people are doing with their androids.
Hmm.
I believe we briefly talked about some of them. So Marcus at Poseidon is cataloging the oceans, and he's in a dolphin android. And then Howard and Bridget are living in a gas giant, and they've adopted. So they're in android form the whole time.
And they also have the balloon animals that they were flying around in, right? So they basically stay in standby so she can still work on her passion project, eventually cataloging all of life, in addition to being a mommy and daddy. Yeah, you also have Rocky and Bullwinkle with Bill and Garfield. I think towards the end they reference a few more there, but the Android project's up and going. Scud communication allows them to travel remotely. That was one of the issues early on with losing backups of the different Bobs being out in the vessels. Now, thanks to Scud, they can go and fly around remotely using heaven vessels, right?
Yeah.
Or being an android body wherever the bobnet is. But yeah, the moot they get to a point where Garfield, who's been working with Bill, kind of helps him relate it to a little bit where he references an old conversation, and they pretty much establish that there's something more than just people and software, right? They've evolved to something else. This series starts off very early on where he is um, made by faith to go and a race to colonize the stars and set up von Neumann probes for one of these five superpowers, five or six superpowers. I think it's five. Um, they've come so far since then, right? Since Bob 2.0, 10 generations later, hundreds of years later.
If you found this helpful, doing a summary before book 4 comes out, let us know. We're planning on making more of them, kind of set up in stages. Spoiler free review. If you like what we say, if that sounds interesting, check it out. Into our summaries, which this is what our summary is for if there's a new book coming out or you want to check out the next one in the series and you've taken some time off, you need a quick recap. And then we also, if you really enjoy the book and you want to talk about it, we do our live book discussions Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, and another point along with these summaries, we know that people read these books at different times, so we're going to do our best to get these summaries done before the Geek Out sessions. That way, if it's a series or fandom that you really enjoy, but it's been a minute for you, you can watch these summaries to kind of help jumpstart your memory and get you back into the world as yeah, we visit and explore. If you feel like we missed anything major that's important to this series, please throw that in the comments below. Spoilers are fair game. We did our best to recap everything we felt important, but there's a lot there that we missed. So continue the conversation below. We also are always geeking out 24/7 on our Discord.
Bye.